Some of the procurement procedures are more complicated than others. They require more time, resources, and administration. On the other hand, the more complex procedures should ensure wider competition and better value for money than the simpler ones. According to the principle of proportionality, more complex procedures that ensure wider competition are used for higher amounts of money. Or when the risks of fraud or of not obtaining best value for money are present. The threshold matrix combines procurement procedures and contract types, and it shows the value bands for each procedure and contract type. So, if you, for example, would estimate that you have a works contract worth around 1 million Danish kroner, you would apply the restricted invitation to bids procedure. But what if you need a contract that combines two contract types? If you, for example, need to print and design a folder on IDP rights. In this case, you determine the contract type by looking at the largest component. If the printing, for example, which is supplies, amounts to 75% of the price, and the design, which is a service, to 25%, you would treat this contract as a supply contract, because the supply part, the printing, is the largest part. And what if you need a mix of supplies? If you, for example, need bricks, timber, and cement for house construction. Normally, the size of each category will determine the procedure you need to use. So, if you need to buy 300,000 Danish kroner of bricks, 65,000 Danish kroner of cement, and 150,000 Danish kroner of timber, you would normally use the restricted invitation to bids procedure if you tender all categories at once. This does not apply if you require the bidders to bid on a kit or a package containing several items. In this case, the sum of all categories, which would be the kit in itself, would determine the procedure to use. An example could be a cooking kit, where we would like all items to be supplied together as one kit. So if the kits in total would cost 500,000 Danish kroner, we would need to use the national invitation to bids procedure. We could also tender each item category separately and assemble the kits ourselves. In this case, it would be the size of each category that determines the procedure to be used. So, if the most expensive item of the kit would be a large pot, and the sum of all large pots would be 100,000 Danish kroner, we would use the restricted invitation to bids procedure when tendering each item separately. And what if you need the supplies, services, or works at different locations and/or at different times? In these cases, you should use the full amount needed at all times in all locations to determine the procedure. Splitting the contracts into smaller contracts to be able to use simpler procurement procedures is something that will trigger suspicion of fraud and will make the expenses unallowable. And remember that selecting more than one supplier is normally possible, as long as you have mentioned this along with the selection and award criteria, and as long as you use the full amount to determine the procedure to use.